It was just past midnight when Ethan Wallace, a Millionaire CEO, slammed on his brakes in the middle of nowhere. Rain poured down in sheets, his headlights slicing through the storm, and there, standing by the side of a dirt road near an old landfill, he saw something that made his heart stop. It was a small boy, barefoot, covered in mud, clutching a torn teddy bear. The boy looked straight at Ethan's car, and whispered something Ethan would never forget. "Mom said you'd come back for us." For a few seconds, Ethan froze, not understanding. Then, as he stepped out of the car and the wind whipped against his face, the boy turned and pointed toward the dark, broken silhouettes of what looked like an abandoned dump. And through the rain, Ethan saw her. A woman lying motionless near a pile of old furniture, her clothes soaked, her face pale. It was Maria, his maid. The woman who'd worked in his mansion every day for 3 years, and then suddenly vanished without a word 2 weeks ago. Cinematic pause. Before we go on, the narrator says softly, "If this story touches your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the Kindness Chronicles, where true stories of compassion come alive." The beginning of a mystery. 2 weeks earlier, everything in Ethan's world had been about business, deals, and control. He was the kind of man people envied, handsome, 42, with a mansion overlooking the hills of Oregon. But behind that success was emptiness. His wife had left years ago, and his daughter, Emily, was away in college. His only real companion at home was Maria, quiet, humble, and endlessly kind. Maria had a little boy named Leo, maybe 7 years old, who sometimes waited for her outside the gates after school. Ethan remembered the way Maria's face would light up when she saw her son. But then, one Monday morning, Maria never showed up for work. No call. No message. Nothing. When his secretary tried to reach her number, it was disconnected. Ethan, annoyed, told the staff to just find a new maid, but something about the silence bothered him. Maria wasn't the kind to vanish. A few days later, he noticed her paycheck was never cashed. The envelope still sat on his office desk. The stormy night. Now, standing in the cold rain beside the dump, Ethan looked down at Maria, her hand cold, her body trembling faintly. "Maria," he shouted, kneeling beside her. "Maria, it's me, Ethan." Her eyelids fluttered. "Mr. Wallace," she whispered weakly. Leo clung to her, crying. Ethan quickly called for help, wrapping his coat around her. As he waited for the ambulance, his eyes fell on something beside her, an old suitcase, half open, filled with broken toys and a few pieces of clothing. There was also a photo, a young Maria holding a baby, standing next to a man whose face was burned in the corner. When the paramedics arrived, they said Maria was suffering from exhaustion, dehydration, and possible pneumonia. Leo was underweight, his body shaking from the cold. Why were they here?" Ethan asked the paramedic. The man sighed. "Looks like they've been living out here for a while, sir." The hospital room. Hours later, at the hospital, Maria lay on the bed, her breathing steady but weak. Leo sat beside her, eyes wide with fear. Ethan stood at the door, his mind spinning. He'd always thought he was a good employer. He paid her well. He thought that was enough. But now, watching Leo hold his mother's hand, he realized how little he'd ever really known about her. When Maria finally opened her eyes, her first words were not about herself. "Leo, is he okay?" Ethan nodded softly. "He's fine. You both are safe now." Tears rolled down her face. "I didn't know where else to go." Ethan frowned. "Maria, what happened? Why were you living out there?" But before she could answer, a nurse entered. "Sir, she needs rest now." Ethan left the room, but he couldn't shake the image of that little boy in the rain saying, "Mom said you'd come back for us." The hidden past. The next day, Ethan returned to the hospital with clothes and food. But when he entered Maria's room, she turned her face away. "Maria," he said softly, "I need to understand what happened." Her eyes filled with tears. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." "Try me," Ethan replied. Maria hesitated. Then, trembling, she said, "When I worked for you, I was hiding from someone. My husband. He was dangerous. He found me." Ethan's heart dropped. She continued, "He came to the mansion when you were out of town. He said if I didn't leave with him, he'd hurt Leo. I didn't know what to do. I ran. We hid wherever we could, old barns, empty houses, until we ended up at the dump. It was the only place no one looked." Ethan clenched his fists. "Why didn't you call me? I would have helped. I didn't want to cause trouble. You've done enough for me already. I didn't think anyone would care." Her voice broke. Ethan felt something inside him shift. All his life he'd chased profit, efficiency, success, but in front of him sat a woman who'd chosen silence over burdening him. "Maria," he said quietly, "no one deserves to live like that. You and Leo will not go back there. Ever." But outside the hospital window, a dark figure stood by the gate, watching. A tall man with a scar across his cheek. And when Ethan left that night, the man followed his car in the rain. The next morning, Maria and Leo were gone. Their hospital beds, empty. A nurse handed Ethan a note left behind. "Don't come looking for us. He found us again. Please forget us. Maria." Ethan crumpled the note in his fist. But as he turned to leave, the nurse added something that froze him in place. "Sir, there was a second note. It was addressed to you." She handed him a small folded paper. Inside were 6 words that made Ethan's blood run cold. "Leo deserves to know the truth. The secret Maria hid." Ethan didn't sleep that night. The words, "Leo deserves to know the truth," echoed in his mind like a storm he couldn't silence. What truth? By dawn, he was back in his office, digging through old employee files, trying to piece together Maria's life before she came to him. Her application listed no previous employers, no address, and no family. It was as if she'd appeared out of nowhere 3 years ago. Then, while scanning through old security footage from his mansion, something caught his eye. In one clip from 2 years ago, Maria was in the backyard with Leo, helping him learn to ride a small bike. Ethan's daughter Emily had been home that summer. Ethan zoomed in, and noticed something strange. Leo's eyes. The same hazel color. The same dimpled smile when he laughed. He looked familiar. Ethan's heart skipped. The hidden connection. Unable to think clearly, Ethan drove to the one person who might know more, his ex-wife, Sarah. When she opened the door, she looked startled. "Ethan? What's wrong?" He showed her the photo of Maria and Leo. "You ever seen them before?" Sarah's face went pale. She turned away. "Oh, God. Sarah, what do you know?" She covered her mouth, tears forming. "Ethan, do you remember the night after our separation? When you were drunk and left for a week without telling anyone where you went?" He frowned. "Yes, vaguely." "Why?" "You ended up in a motel outside town. You called me that night, remember? You said you felt lost. That's where you met her. Maria. She worked there as a cleaner." Ethan's chest tightened. "What are you saying?" Sarah whispered, "Ethan. Leo is your son." The room fell silent except for the sound of his heartbeat. The race to save them. For a moment, Ethan couldn't move. His thoughts collided in chaos: Maria's kindness, her silence, the boy's words, "Mom said you'd come back for us." Everything made sense now. She hadn't asked for help because she didn't want to destroy his family. She'd hidden the truth